What is up, world? It's your boy Tan, and you are listening to the Wonton Wealth Podcast. Here, I'm going to unravel anything and everything commercial real estate related. And more importantly, we're going to add abundant value. So if you're ready, buckle up your eardrums. All right. Well, today I got a badass guest for you guys. His name is Jomar. This guy can talk circles around cold storage. Always blows my mind, so I'm super excited for today. Jomar, if you could, quick background on who you are and what you're currently doing as it relates to commercial real estate.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, I'm a cold storage specialist. I've been building cold storage for the last, couple of years. I currently work for Walmart, and I help lead their cold storage development program, building new grocery related facilities or temp state controlled facilities all around the country. I love it. It's something that excites me. I think it's really interesting how 3/4 of the American plate has to be refrigerated or it has to be processed, shipped, all that type of stuff in refrigerated space. So it's just like, it involves everyone. It involves the consumer's pocket. Because when you go to the grocery store and you're like, oh my gosh, why is this turkey like $5 to $9? That's bad cold storage infrastructure, right? And we don't want that, right? So, been in the space for a while, really like it. Before Walmart, I was at Amazon doing port related fulfillment centers or port related real estate. And then before Amazon, I was at a private equity company called EQT Exeter, or Exeter Property Group, as it was formerly called. And they're a large house warehouse. They're a large warehouse investor. But I've always loved cold storage. I always want to be in the space, and so the position I'm in now allows me to understand cold storage from scale, which is how you really make money in cold storage, right? Don't get me wrong. The small facilities are great, but the larger facilities are where you're really able to deliver cost savings for the consumer, right? So like Jerry or little kids can like eat strawberries and berries at night and have to stuff their faces full, and it costs like $3 or $4, something like that. So
And it's
that's a
nutritious,
little bit of
right?
that. Yeah, like it's so needed, and it's considered mission critical infrastructure as well, right?
Oh.
Because without it, people can't eat. Like the first bananas used to be a delicacy, right? Like, so bananas come from tropical environments, right? So Latin America, like Honduras and India, and it used to be really expensive, right? But then there was an interesting an innovator who learned how to build ships in the correct way and used whale oil to find the right temperature and maintain the right temperature for bananas so they wouldn't rot on the way to America. And then they found how to like essentially give everyone access to bananas, right? So it's like a lot of the things we think about today, a lot of these tropical fruits, it was like caviar back then, right? And now everyone can enjoy them. So a little bit about Cold Chain and myself.
A little bit of a history there too. I didn't know that. That's fascinating. But
Yeah.
I want to back up a little bit. You mentioned working with Amazon on their ports. Could you elaborate on that? Like, are we talking about like ship ports or what?
Yeah. So essentially, the program I helped lead at Amazon was it was called IPC, International Port Centers. Essentially, they'd be shipping sometimes food, but they'd be shipping non-sortables. Non-sortables are, goods that you can't easily fit within an 8x8 box, right? So kayaks, TVs, bikes, that type of stuff. A lot of that stuff gets imported, right? From Asia or Europe or what have you. And so they needed, or that program needed a way to find land in and around the port that was, we'd work with the port to get, cost effective land. And we'd build on that site. The issue is all the land by the port, it's swampland, right? It's like marsh. So like I need to find the right site, do all the wetlands delineations reports, understand soil stability, so the soil can handle certain loads for automation, and then we can put this automation to handle these kayaks and these canoes and these bikes and these TVs. And so I put together kind of an asset and say, hey, this is going to give us this much capacity for these amount of volumes over these many years. And so deliver that to the team, and would execute on real estate developments in and around ports. Only usually the bigger ports like Tacoma, Houston, sometimes Jacksonville. Virginia was a big one. So yeah, that was kind of my extent of experience at Amazon.
Holy shit. So it sounds like a lot of research, a lot of engineering, a lot of math, and just a lot of shit in general to go into
Yeah.
designing all these things, right? Okay, well, now let's talk about cold storage. So, for those of us who have no idea what cold storage is, what exactly is cold storage and how is it different from your standard warehouse?
Yeah. So cold storage is temperature controlled real estate, right? What temperature controlled real estate does, it protects the product integrity of a specific product that has a very short shelf life. Bananas, berries, even pharmaceuticals, right? And that building envelope needs to be so tight that it doesn't allow like oxygen, or I'm sorry, carbon dioxide to escape, right? Because if it does, now let's say you have a $4 million shipment, you put it into a bad building that has all these creeks and like spaces, and the envelope is horrible and the ceiling's horrible. Your $4 million freight just turned to zero, because when you send it over to a Walmart or a Kroger, they're gonna be like, I'm not accepting this. It has bugs on it, right? Or this, it has blemishes because it started rotting. I'm not taking it, right? So a cold storage building protects the product integrity of a product that is not shelf stable, right? It differs from dry industrial warehousing, because dry industrial warehousing, there are there are, it doesn't need ventilation. It doesn't really care about if carbon dioxide escapes, right? It's a dry building whereby you can leave dock doors open the whole time. They're not concerned about airflow as much, because you're shipping goods that are shelf stable, right? If you were to take I don't know, headphones, and leave it on, in some racking for about 6 months, you're not worried about it, right? It's not like the product integrity or the value of those headphones are going to disintegrate. With an Apple, completely different, right? So that's the
Uh,
difference.
Aside from, so we're hearing that, produce, right? Fruit, and pretty much some pharmaceuticals as well. Are there
Yep.
any other industries that rely heavily on cold storage?
Yeah. So there's meat, there's dairy, there's I mentioned pharmaceuticals already. There are clean rooms to build electronic generators, right? There are there's several other industries, but the main ones are really produce, dairy, meat, uh, you know, sometimes wind turbines need to be stored in cold storage, and pharmaceuticals. Those are the really mission critical ones.
Okay, got it. So a wide array, honestly, some of the things that we don't even think about that requires cold storage. What are the temperatures usually in these cold storage facilities?
So it can really range, right? And when it does range, your building's completely different. Like a building that stores mangoes at 34 degrees is going to be completely different than a building that stores ice cream at 15 degrees and below, right? That's a freezer. Less than 15 degrees is a freezer building. Much more expensive build, right? But frozen is energy conducive, but it's higher margins, right? Because it's more shelf stable. There's less risk there, right? So in terms of degrees, you'll have your like 70 to 75, which is really like candy, flowers, that type of stuff, right? And sometimes clean rooms will be around that temperature, microchip processing as well, a little bit of that. Um, then you'll have like 50 to 50, or no, 55 to like 58, which is more so like apples, probably like oranges. Then you'll have more sensitive degrees, right? So you'll go to like maybe like 34 to like 37. That will be your mangoes. a little bit more citrus there, kiwis, and then you'll go all the way to like 30, sub 30, 20 to 30. That's where you get your berries and your strawberries. So, like, very expensive fruit, but lower temperatures, right? Then you get into your 15 below, which is like kind of frozen yogurt, ice cream. And then if you really want to get crazy, you go super frozen, you'll go 10 below, and then that's where you get into your meats and stuff like that. So,
Holy shit. So a wide range of temperatures here, okay? Which means that the HVAC or the components of the cooling in general has to be superficial. But outside of the HVAC, could you give us a peek behind the curtain on what are the main components that a cold storage facility needs?
yeah. So the first one I would say is the building envelope, right? Like a lot of people talk about R values for like roofing, right? So they'll be like, R25, R30 to keep, moisture or not moisture, like ventilation in essentially, right? But one of the big parts is this building envelope and having sealants in and around the facility, around every dock door, around all those parts are super important because you can't let carbon dioxide escape, right? If it does, more oxygen comes in, and then, if you watch an apple on a table, like without any temperature control, right, you'll just see that will happen to all the fruit. So the sealants are one of the most important things, right? There are three types of refrigerants or liquids that people use to build cold storage buildings. There's ammonia. Ammonia is like what you use to build to scale, right? It's technically considered a pollutant, but there are a lot of safeguards in in a safety protocol that can protect against like leakages or anything like that. But it's the most efficient refrigerant. You can't build a 500,000 square foot building with another type of refrigerant. It's impossible, right? Then you have carbon dioxide, 10 times more expensive than ammonia, but it's more sustainable, right? So happy humans, safe humans. The third is Freon. Freon is interesting because although you can't scale with it, it's enables you to move between different types of temperatures. Like if you needed to go from, 15 degrees all the way to 55, you can do that with refrigerant in a smaller building. And sometimes you need that because um, you get different products, right? What if you need to switch temperatures and your facility's not big enough, right? So that Freon helps with that. So you have your refrigeration system, then you have your compressor. Compressor's super important. Think about like a fridge, right? You know when you open your fridge and it's humming all about, right? It's actually using ammonia to turn it from liquid gas to turn it from liquid to gas, right? Using your compressor. And while it gets cooled down, it turns from liquid to gas and then back to liquid. Like the whole the fridge needs to be cooled down, right? So your compressor kind of helps that lack of a better term metamorphosis from liquid to gas and then gas to liquid. And some people, because if your compressor goes down, then your whole building's done, right? So some people have backup compressors, right? And some people will have smaller compressors in case one fails, they have another one going, right? So that's like a super important part. And the last part I would say is the slab, because in like cold storage automated buildings, like if the building is too cold and you don't have glycol on the slab, which is another sealant, then the slab will break, right? And you have big cracks in the slab, you got robots running all about, it runs into a crack and then your whole operation is non-efficient, right? Just not efficient at all. So refrigeration system, compressor, slab. Those are, and then building envelope, making sure like your dock doors are sealed, all the doors are sealed, roll up doors are super duper important, things like that. So that's kind of the breakdown of a building. There's more, but
And
like those are the main parts.
and then the walls. So I'm guessing those are going to be super insulated, right? Do they have to be a certain thickness or a certain material in order to keep this temperature consistent within?
Yes, sometimes, right? It depends on what you're storing in the building, right? They all have a certain amount of thickness. Like I think for like freezer, I think it can be upwards of like probably like I would say 5 feet. But there's also R values attached as well, right? You can go to R30, you can go to R35, right? It's all dependent on the product. And while we're talking about the wall, we might as well talk about dock doors because dock doors are awesome. So like, I mentioned dock doors are sealed. Um, they actually have like kind of like vertical, um, these vertical plates, right? So like when you load product into a dock door, right? You open up the dock door, the truck backs up into the dock door, and bam, everything's good, right? But in order to save time, the dock door plates are actually they're vertical. They can like when you close the dock door and it closes, that vertical plate kind of before it closes, it comes up and then the dock door closes, right? Because they need to save as much ventilation and air and temperature as much as possible. Because one thing you don't want to do is accept, again, these are like $4 million worth of product, and then you have a broken chain where you have sealants open and your dock door doesn't work, and now you're sending like apples to your retailer or customer, and that QC person goes, hey, these apples have blemishes. I don't want it. Send it back. Give me a new one. Right? Like that happens, right? So the margin of error is so small. And with pharmaceuticals, it's even smaller, right? So,
Jeez. Very technical, right? So it has to
yeah,
follow all these protocols in order to make sure that you're not losing a shit ton of money on this on the produce or the product in general, right? It sounds to
that's
me
right.
also that these buildings are also very user specific. So it depends on
Yes.
who is operating within this unit, and that kind of comes down to what type of refrigerant you need and how many zones of different temperatures you need. Would that be the correct assumption?
That is
So
very accurate.
let's say we have no idea who the tenant for this particular building is. Let's say it's 200,000 square feet. And if we were to just develop it without knowing which particular tenant is going to fill it, whether it be a pharmaceutical company or a grocer, etc., how do we fit that mold so that we can actually find a tenant, let's say in the food industry? So they have multiple types of products. So ideally, we would want to have multiple different refrigerant zones, freezer included, correct? How do you maintain consistent temperatures throughout these zones? Like, are there doors that separate each particular zone, or I don't know. What does that even look like?
So there are different chambers, right? And they are separated by kind of these. It's much more than a demising wall. It's like the thickest wall ever, right? To maintain the temperature in every. And if you walked into a chamber that was 15 degrees and 34 degrees and 54 degrees, you'd feel it. You're like, oh my god, it's cold in here. Oh yeah, because there's ice cream in these racks. Got it. Right? Like they like the building some of the building chambers are so well built that they can separate 34 degree, I mean 72 degrees to 15 degrees. I've seen it done, right? And if I may speak about these buildings, right? Cuz they're really like I think they're like kind of these engineering marvels because essentially you're storing different product types in this building that takes so much power, and like you have your margin of error is so thin, right? Like there are even algorithms that will say, hey, we need to fix our processes in this and in this in this in this part of our cold chain so we can produce the perfect kiwi, the perfect mango, the perfect apple, right? There are algorithms literally speaking to like, hey, this is the perfect fruit, this is how we do it, right? And sometimes those algorithms will look at that piece of fruit and say, hey, we just got the shipment, it's inbound from the supplier didn't do the packaging right, here's what they need to fix, right? So it's just like when you talk about these different temperatures, even more important is like the packaging, right? And how the supplier gets it ready to send it to a building for it to be then sent to the end customer. But yeah, chambers are key, but every building is so different and so special. And I think what's happening in the market today is you'll have these 800-pound gorillas in the space called Lineage and Americold that are essentially for the last, let's call it, last 5 years, they've been experiencing some turmoil because these users with strong balance sheets are saying, hey, if these guys are, the big, they have a lot of scale, but they're not handling my product exactly how it's supposed to be handled. Right? They're not protecting my product integrity. They're built so the average cold storage building in Americold's portfolio, it was built on average in the 1950s. Right? So it's just like these buildings are super old, right? And just for example, and now you have an unprecedented amount of cold storage supply, in the market. You know, I would say starting around 2015, from 2015 to 2018, there's probably like 300 million square feet of cold storage space in the market, adding a million square feet every year. From 2020 to 2025, they added 25 million of stock,
Wow.
industrial cold storage stock. So you're seeing an unprecedented kind of amount of supply hitting the space, and it's caused users to say, "Hey, I don't need Americold, I don't need Lineage to run these facilities. I want to run them, right? Or I'll hire a developer to build this building for me, and then I'm going to buy it from him or her, when it's done." Right? So the market has shifted where users are taking more accountability, they're taking a little bit more development risk, right? To build facilities exactly as they want it, to operate it themselves, as opposed to having a Lineage or a Maricold operate it for them or build it for them. Right? They'll go to these kind of smaller pop and shops, get something that's purpose built just for them, and then run it so they can protect the product integrity, shorten the supply chain, and offer that value to their customers. Because at the end of the day, product quality is key.
Would you say that it's easier to develop a cold storage or to redevelop an existing warehouse?
I would say it's easier to go ground up for sure. I mean, definitely it takes capital, it takes know-how. You got to have the right partners for sure. However, I think what's interesting about this space is the ability or the appetite among users with strong balance sheets to buy it day one of the lease. Because most of them want to buy it day one of the lease. They just don't want to deal with the entitlements and the jurisdiction and the ammonia and the refrigeration systems and the safety protocols. Fine. You'll have your development partner handle that, right? But they oftentimes want to buy their own assets.
Got it. If we're looking at, let's, developing something like this from and obviously every market's going to be different, but what are you generally seeing from a price per square foot standpoint? And it sounds like the three main components that you mentioned: the slab, the refrigerant, and what was it, the envelope?
The compressor, and then I put the envelope last.
Got it, got it. So how much does one of these compressors run, let's say, for a 200,000 square foot building, and to get like the proper refrigerant in there, and how thick of a slab and all that are you seeing?
So in terms of slab thickness, I mean 7 is for dry. Um, I would say anywhere between like 9, I mean 8 to 9 is probably standard. If you've got automation, I've seen 12, right? Um,
Wow.
what I can speak about is not so much the compressor, but how much does a freezer building cost? How much does a fresh building cost? A freezer building can run you like 350 a foot. I want to say 300 to 350 a foot, and then a fresh building will probably cost you 25 250, anywhere from 225 to 275 a foot. So they're expensive, right? Most of the time, if you're talking about food or you're talking about a specific food category like produce, most of the pricing for building shell is pretty much the same. What changes is the land cost basis per square foot, right? So that's really your determinant factor, and all the automation and the racking usually comes from the tenant, unless you're amortizing that
Gotcha.
or they're buying it from you on day one of the lease.
Looking at it from a location perspective, because like you mentioned, with kind of all the standard operating procedures, there's a very small margin of error. So they want to be as close as possible to their destination, right? From a location perspective, what are you seeing are the main factors that drive where these facilities are located or should be built?
Access to power and access to people. If you don't have those two things, it really doesn't you really can't create a business case unless you've got a lot of volume and you're like, hey, I can go to the port, I can build a 200,000 square foot bad boy, and I'm gonna fill that. I'm gonna fill that thing because I've got all these contracts. I'm sitting pretty right now, right? So people and power are the most important things. People, because you need to decrease transportation costs, right? If you were to look at the cost of a pallet, right? A general pallet, and someone says, "Hey, what's my cost? I'm building a business case. What's my cost per pallet?" Most of that cost is taken up by transportation. Warehousing, labor is like probably like 30-40%. Transportation is usually like 50-60%, right? And that goes for any company. So like being closer to the customer, very big deal. And then access to power, right? We are in an age where power is cold storage facilities are competing against data center developers, to a point where data center developers will overpay just to get power. They will overpay by 30, 40, 50% on the land just because they're like, oh, this land site is perfect. I can pull power from, these existing utility lines. There's a substation nearby, yada, yada, yada. So power and people are absolutely key. If you start from those two things, you got a business case. If you're missing one or the other, it's not good.
From a power capacity standpoint, I'm imagining it needs three phase, but what's the amperage that it needs? And when you say access to people, I'm guessing it has to be pretty close to a residential area, right, for workers to be there, and your commute being having to be close to highways, the main arteries, right?
Yep, yep, yep. So, in terms of being close to people, you wouldn't be directly like down. I mean, you can be infill, but most jurisdictions won't allow that. So, you'll probably be like an hour or maybe 30, 45 minutes outside a major city or a big city or decent sized city. And then, I'm sorry, what was your second question?
The power capacity,
Ants. Yeah.
amps, yes.
So I would say most facilities, if you're above 7,000 amps, you can start to play ball. You get to 11, then like the world starts to open up. Once you get to 15, it's like you've got it made, right? But what people really like is megawatts. If you say 1, 2, 3 megawatts, you've got it made for sure. But I mean, these cold storage facilities, they can go up to like 30 megawatts, which is a couple cities if you really think about it.
Wow. To run a cold storage facility, you're going to have to keep these things on 24/7. The compressors run in
Yeah,
overdrive, right? Now,
that's right.
electrical is running 24/7 as well. What are the general
Yep.
like expense costs that you're seeing, let's say once again for a 200,000 square foot building from an electrical standpoint and whatever else?
Yeah. So this is completely dependent upon how efficient are you running your facility, right? Like this is an operations question. Love this stuff. So like if people are leaving doors open, right? If they're not closing the doors behind them, right? Or let's say they're not doing the right maintenance checks, right? Or let's say, their power equipment is super inefficient, very, very old building, then you can easily see electricity utility costs being like at least 30 to 20% of your carrying costs. I mean, easy, even probably even more. So it can really. I've seen 50, I've seen 60% before. It's the largest line item over a 10-year horizon. Largest line item. I mean, it compares to the development of the actual thing if your building's not efficient. So like
Wow.
getting a newer buildings or really good maintenance, really good operations, really good protocol is massively important. However, if you're a developer or you're a landlord and seeing that as these users want to control more of their operations, user usually takes care of that. It's triple net, right? So you're not really worried about it.
Right. So from an operational standpoint, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see operators or owners make when they're running a cold storage facility?
Oh man, the biggest thing I would say is like it really just comes down to maintenance and leaks and having a routine check of your refrigeration system. Um, if I go to an owner and I ask him, hey, what's your standard SOP? And he doesn't have one, it's like, dude, what are you doing? Right. And the second part is I will ask them like, hey, like, what's your what's your accident rate? What's your fail rate? Because people work in cold storage facilities, right? And sometimes those jobs are, you have to have a lot of safety protocols in place, right? And accidents do happen. How often do they happen? Right? So maintenance checks, safety protocols are probably the two most important operational questions I would ask before I step into any cold storage building and I'm talking to a user about how they run their operation, right? Because at the end of the day, people is key, right? Having really good people paying attention to how they're, maintaining the facility, running these checks, seeing if there are any leaks, seeing if there's any like, even small things as I'm sure you see like pallet chips on the floor all the time, right? If you have an automated forklift and it runs over that, and that forklift starts to just drive everywhere, like, be crazy, right? So, again, that would lead to accidents. So, trying to protect your downside in terms of accidents and maintaining your refrigeration systems, your compressors, all that good stuff is paramount to operations.
And that's a wrap. If you've made it this far, that means you've listened to the entire episode, so thank you. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And if you've learned something or found it useful, share it with one of your homies. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm pretty active on IG. My handle is pro_TANH. Reach out, let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, or what you want to hear about in the future. I'm here to tailor this to you. Until next time.